Morning, everyone. I'm super excited to welcome Mary Catherine Wilson, CMO of Future Tech. Mary Catherine, welcome.
Thank you, Sugata. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I know we have known each other for a while. Our paths never crossed at Dell, and a few years have passed by since then. So I'm really eager to sort of catch up with you and learn some of the things that has happened, where things are, and where things are going in this big thing called ecosystem.
Yeah, it's been a few years, I know, since our paths crossed and when they did, I think we were both surprised it had been so long. So, yeah, happy to be here and share, I guess, what I'll call life on the other side, right? And having spent so much time at a vendor and now in the shoes of a partner, it's I always try to put myself in the shoes of the partner when I was on the vendor side, and now I'm literally in them.
Let's dial back a little bit. Let's start with you and with your journey, and then we'll talk about maybe, what the ecosystem looked like about a decade ago from a vendor perspective. How is it, looking now? And
Yeah.
then we'll switch roles. We'll go to the partner side.
I've spent really my entire career in technology, right? Starting at Accenture and then have spent over 2 decades at Dell in all sorts of different types of roles, operational but with respect to partner, I did help to build Dell's partner program, right? One of the largest OEMs at the time, right? And I managed the program design and the marketing and from the ground up. And so it was an amazing time to kind of open the doors to partners and build all sorts of different types of relationships and then to build all of the enablement and that partners would need. And so very proud of that time that on the vendor side that where I was able to build that program and marketing guidance and partner councils and spent a lot of time obviously talking to partners and learning, but as you know, because you spend every day, talking about, there's tons of challenges too, right? In the operations and management and sales and marketing. So, but it was an amazing time. We added $1 billion to the P&L for 8 years straight, which is, just tremendous growth. And with that, your program can't change. Your program has to change to adapt. So in this case, it wasn't maybe new technology, but it was just the immense amount of growth and number of new entrants, for partners. So a lot of change, and it was really a lot of fun. And so
Let's talk a little bit about that. So at Zinfi, we talk a lot about partner operations, which you just mentioned, and we kind of put a framework together in a 7-step process, which is first one is strategize and target, then recruit, onboard, enable, co-market, co-sell, incentivize, and accelerate. So when you think back from a very large brand perspective with hundreds of products, multiple countries, thousands of partners, and direct sales force, talk to us a little bit about when you were asked to put programs together. Where did you start? What was your journey like? Who did you work with? I think that'll be a fascinating insight for others who are in mid market and want to be in your role one day.
the best advice, and it is free, is listen to partners. That's it. And I think you'll find that that's a theme that I'm going to keep coming back to because the way I the way that I built and evolved that program, right? Because again, after from zero really to about 8 billion, you cannot be the same at all. That's and so listening to partners, I probably had at any given time maybe four different partner councils. Certainly maybe a top level partner council, one for kind of a mid level, a distribution, and selfishly because I was responsible for kind of the program and marketing, I even at one point built a marketing council to see, okay, well, these are not salespeople or technical. They are out there leading the charge with our products. And I really wanted to see what did they need? What did they need in the way of enablement? It wasn't sales enablement, it's marketing enablement, but really just making sure that they had, the assets and the tools that they needed. I think one of the, I appreciated it when I was on the vendor side that you have a lot of different, that partners have a lot of different vendors. And to your point, there's a lot of different products, even within, maybe one OEM, let alone if I have, a top 10, that there's just a lot of complexity naturally in the ecosystem, for a partner. And I always, I think, appreciated that, but certainly more so now that I'm on the other side. But listening, really. The other thing I'll say, and then I'll just take a pause, is like we were able to adapt really quickly. And I think that that is especially true in, today's ecosystem of shifting technologies and shifting economies and those type of things, which even surprised me with a ship as big as we were steering. We were able to not only listen to them, to the partners, but actually make changes within a reasonable amount of time that that adapted to what their needs were. So that always helps, right? You can listen, and if you don't feel like you can impact that change, but we really were at the time. We were, building and growing and had a lot of support. So
That's terrific. So let's go back to these four types of councils because a lot of people want to work with partner councils. It's not easy
mhm.
because you get candid feedback, and then most importantly, you have to work on them, show results, and keep getting back at it. But you had four, so you had top tier, you had like mid market or middle tier, and then you have
Mhm.
distribution and marketing.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through like what were the commonalities and approach, and what were different about each of those, and how did you manage those, grew those, delivered against that expectation? And
Mhm.
then sometimes you possibly had to tell them, no, we're not going to do that.
I think some of the best relationship building at that time too, right? So certainly an opportunity to bring in executives and technical expertise. So there was kind of always a component of education to bring to the partners. There was certainly a lot of listening and back and forth, and really even real time problem solving, because I think I took a survey this morning, right? I see micro surveys. I see long form surveys from vendors. Last year, one OEM interviewed me for about an hour. Those longer interviews and that two-way street that we had in some of the councils were allowed for those nuances, right? Like the really specific challenges that we had, and then we're able to almost problem solve together and figure out. Now, you made a point that you can't say yes to everything. And I think that that's the two-way street of appreciating kind of the mindset that the vendor has and the mindset that the partner has, right? So probably limited resources on both fronts, regardless of where you sit. But that was, and then having the right people in the room, right? Because, I found at our, like, say, main partner conference, depending on the attendees, you would get CEOs, you would get heads of sales, but then, for example, you rarely got maybe a marketer. Some You got a lot of vendor managers, right, responsible maybe for the brand. And so I think being able to have those different roles at either, different councils gave you the real feedback of what they were dealing with. So, is it a salesperson that's working in the field trying to move that deal over the goal line? Is it the marketer that's trying to get that campaign into market? But is it the person who's, on the back end doing technical training that takes, a day with proctored exam? It just allowed us with more councils to get more discrete feedback.
So can you talk like maybe one of these groups, what is the typical construct of the group?
Face to face is always best. I know we have all lived through the Zooms and Teams, but face to face was always best. We did try to make an effort to put it around our industry events. So I was at Dell, in the case, of Dell World, we would try to carve off, for our marketing council, that's about what we needed. We really only needed, a couple of hours to get them. And most of them were at that. So we tried to make sure that we could optimize kind of for their travel time and be face to face. And then for the larger councils, if, we were bringing them in for multiple days and making sure that they were having meetings with our executives and giving, so really optimizing their time, but all of them were really face to face.
And what were the frequencies of these sort of council meetings?
I would say once or twice a year.
And who else would you have in the room other than bringing in execs, for engagement? What would be the team from your side that worked with these council?
Well, my experience was from the internal, right? Everyone really wanted to hear what partners were dealing with. We almost had to keep people out of the room, and because I was always cognizant of you don't want to overwhelm partners. If you have 25 partners, you don't need 100 of your internal folks. Although probably 200 want it to be there. So that's really encouraging, right? I mean, hopefully you're at a company where everybody is interested in learning what they have to say. So we had to keep people out, but that was we wanted to make sure. Again, that the education, right, that they took away just as much as we did, right, both from one another, but also so we made sure that we were sharing priorities, sharing programmatic changes, sharing we had these tenants, and I still simple, predictable, profitable, and that's Dell's had been Dell's partner program tenants, and I think if people stick to that, maybe there's slight nuances in what they're called. You're guaranteed with that as a barometer to have a good program.
So I was actually just coming to that. So you ran these events and quite a bit of engagement and a lot of effort. And so coming back to measurement metrics wise, you measured simple, predictable, profitable, but were there any metrics associated with these partner council? How did you track progress and outcomes? How did you communicate that? What was that like?
We would take like an NPS, like a net promoter score for partners. I would say though that we tried for a period of about 3 years to keep the participants consistent. And so it led to more accountability on our side and their side. And so it would just enable us we'd have to look the same people in the face and say, not only we heard you, but we execute it into the state. The other thing that we did was because there was consistency, as much as possible on both sides, we actually had started to build scorecards and really say like, here's what we talked about the last time, and here's where we are. And it was a set of, initiatives or changes. I mean, sometimes they were deal red changes, sometimes they were profitability changes, but we just kept track of that. And, they held us accountable because they were the same, the same participants every time. So there was a bit of an accountability factor there.
Yeah, and then I'm sure you've seen that also. I've seen this is a huge sort of feather on partners cap to be on a council, especially a brand like Dell's. So they take it very, very seriously. So from your side, did they have homework before they came in, or like how what was their role in that in preparation wise?
We typically would only allow, one person from that company. And so most of the homework was just making sure that they were a true representative of all of those roles we talked about before. So the biggest homework was just kind of gathering from the team where are the challenges that you want, in this case, Dell to address, and making sure it's represented. And I find now being on the other side, whether I'm on that vendor council or one of my my heads of sales, is that I want my voice to be heard regardless. So I'm going to make sure he knows. But that was the biggest homework. And in fact, we can keep going down that path full circle. My boss today, when I went to a solution provider, Future Tech, was on our partner advisory council. So building those really strong relationships, that was the accountability, and that was the beauty of really having I always call it the voice of the customer, because I considered partners my customer, right? Some people stick with the partner nomenclature, but they were my customer. They were the ones buying from me, promoting from me, so I treat them like I treat my end customers today.
So if you go through sort of the journey, right, from the beginning to an end, then we'll go into a few other topics, but I kind of wrap this
Yeah,
up. I
yeah.
want to wrap it up. So when you think about the journey over the years, forming these force, what was it like in the beginning, and what were the major trends you saw evolving through voice of the customer, voice of the partner over those periods?
You can probably take those tenets of simple, predictable, profitable, and there was a kind of a major effort in each of those. I think from simple, it probably was around the tool set. When we were first starting, rebates, incentives, deal reg were on, just basic systems and maybe less sophisticated, even though we were building from ground up. So I think there was, particularly in a space that was mature with big distribution partners, so the expectations were really high from partners. And so I think that simple of getting the tool set right was was really critical, even from onboarding, just making sure, I mean, the basics of if someone's opening their doors to a partner program. The predictability had probably more to do with deal registration and partner conflict. I mean, every program deals with what, whether they're, yes, at the time we had a direct sales force, but even then there's partner conflict. So the predictability of like, what can I expect from Dell was a big one. And then, on the profitability side, the just making sure that the set of partners that we want it to grow, we're growing, right? It's easy, I think, in a program to say, well, my biggest partner is my highest revenue, get the most money, and that's one way. But there were, you know, pieces of our business, in our case, storage, which were a growing piece, and maybe those weren't the largest. There were, some great smaller to mid-tier partners that were, really, really selling tons of storage. And so that profitability. So that's what we saw. That's what I saw.
So, kind of dialing forward a little bit, coming to the moment when you kind of decided that you're going to switch sides. So talk a little bit about that. Like, how did that happen? Why did you decide? You have such incredible experience with multiple brands, and especially someone like Accenture and etc. What opportunities did you see to jump to future tech?
I guess, to start with, just Future Tech is, a top 100 partner out of I believe the last count was 100,000 in the United States. So, and we were, founded by Bob Venero. We service customers in the, Fortune 100 and have warehouses and configurations across the country. And I mentioned that Bob was on Dell's partner council. And so I had a relationship with him, and was when I started, looking for, what was next. And I had, we always build development plans for ourselves, right? And set different goals. And one of my goals was, to be a chief marketing officer and to run the entire, end to end of marketing. And so I had great conversations with Bob and a relationship. And what really appealed to me was the customer centric nature of Future Tech and of Bob himself. And that's really what attracted me to. I love, in our case, we do work a lot with federal systems integrators. So, they're directly tied to missions that, keep our our country safe, and just being, kind of a small part of that is what appealed to me.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So let's double click on the word CMO. That word has been evolving quite a
Mhm.
bit.
Mhm.
So I'd love to hear your perspective, what that meant maybe 10 years ago, what it is now, and maybe where you think that's going.
We all have limited resources, right? And part of that is just the pressure you want to put, on in the business. I would say probably some of the biggest changes for CMOs these days is the breadth of, we've probably been talking for 30 minutes and no one said AI yet, so probably just the breadth of tools. I think it's particularly interesting for like a CMO of a partner, because you have this, you're delivering discrete technology, but you have this ecosystem of partners that are behind you. And so it is really important to understand kind of what the brands bring to market. But it's also important to understand, like, okay, well, how are you, in our case, how is Future Tech building a PC as a service to bring to, which has different components of different OEMs. And then it has, secret sauce from our perspective, and bringing those to market. And just looking at the entire gamut of, one of the first things I learned when I began in marketing was, you were talking about a discipline that has very creative people, and building advertisements and graphics and designing, to, on the other spectrum, data analytics, who are building data lakes to do targeting and intent buying. So you really have this just like huge gamut of just disciplines that one person has to know. So I think today's CMO also is best if they surround themselves with individuals that have expertise maybe where they don't, right? And so I think that was one of the biggest things for me, is I knew operationally I was really good. I had an ops background. I had, run this large program. I could do that. Hey, the creative, I I like to, see what other people have to say. That's, so I just playing to my strengths, and I think CMOs today have to do that. They have to, whether they build their own team or they build an internal external team to supplement, because there's so many disciplines.
So I'd love to hear one specific perspective I think that you will uniquely have that very few people have is that, working for a very big brand like Dell, where you have thousands of products. So when you're starting up, a company like ours, 150 people, we have crystal clear clarity around who our ideal customer profile is. So communication to that group is very, very easy. No, our message may be off, execution may be off, but pathway reaching to that customer is very clear. When you are a multi-product company, and in fact in a multi-product category, the challenge is enormous, right? Every product manager or product marketing manager is competing for the CMO council and trying to get the buy-in that you got to push my product, I got the greatest thing, right?
Yeah.
So flip that to the other side from future tech. I'm sure you carry company brands of different sizes. So if you had to kind of share your perspective that if I'm, one product company, 10, 20, $50 million in revenue versus if I'm 250 to 500 multi-product, now I am, a billion or more, I'm in a multi-category, right? How do they engage with partners? Like, because people tend to throw all of their lits and here it is, right? So how would you advise those three groups of companies of different sizes to engage with future tech to enable you from a marketing perspective? What would be the difference between those three groups of companies? Small, medium, large.
So real quickly, you're talking about like a small, medium, and large
Brands.
vendor.
Yeah. So single
Okay.
product to multi-category.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. That's a big challenge for partners, like I mentioned, in the huge ecosystem. Last count, I counted about 85 portals that I had access to. Now, we probably even sell more than that on the line card, right? And have both transactional vendors that we're working with, and definitely deep relationship vendors that we're working with. I think the biggest, and some of those single vendors can be very useful in specific verticals, right? So we spend a lot of time with, within federal, and so there are some single product companies that on the hardware and on software side, that's really critical to our solution. And then, you have the larger ones that they have a very large line card. Yes. And so we have to consume really what our partners need. I mean, what our customers need. With some of the larger OEMs that have long line cards, we just have to select what is best for us and for our solutions at Future Tech. They help with that through, a series of competencies, and enable us with both, product training, but it's very difficult to hold the line card for all of them. So it's really where we want to make investments, and that all stems from what our customers need.
That makes a lot of sense. From our perspective, we have basically two groups of enterprise accounts. We have 27 Fortune 100 companies, but then we have, a couple hundred mid-market. And we see distinct different needs from those groups. The ones that are larger, they're more, supporting a pull through that's coming from the partner base. They have clarity on what they need to build quarter by quarter. And so it's a demand fulfillment, whether you look at marketing
Mhm.
enablement or programs or promotions or whatnot, right? So there, the pure focus need, tends to be in operations and executions and excellence around those. The ones that are in mid-market, which are trying to grow, recruit, and reach, different markets, and they want to get into a future tech, they always, I see there is sort of this worry about, will they give us mind share, because they're already working with a Dell and a Lenovo and HP of the world, right? So if you were speaking to the second group, like a mid-market,
Mhm.
and you were the CMO there, or you're, leading the channel
Right.
team, what's the best way to take your single product or a multi-product company, let's say, tens of millions to hundreds of millions, to really engage with a top 100 partner like Future Tech?
Yeah.
How do they get attention? What do they need to demonstrate? How do they partner up? How do
Yeah.
they even
And
get mind share?
I told you that the theme would be listen to your partners. And I think it's can be more difficult because maybe they have less time to spend recruiting and onboarding, but the biggest is just to listen to what does future tech do? Here are two main offers of PC as a service and day one readiness to help. Where are we going with our customers? And then for them to be able to answer the question themselves, how do I fit in to that model, right? And so I think where you were getting at, so many times it's just easy. I have this product I want to sell you, and you have you have a lot of big customers on the back end, so you could just walk in and sell it to them, right? And it doesn't work that way. It's like you if you understand what and how we are delivering to our customers and the opportunities that we can bring them. So how do we bring your product as an opportunity to our customer and help them make us look good and then sell your product? I think that's the win-win-win. Really understanding the partner, which takes time. Again, it all comes back to the best engagement and the best partnership is when you really are a partner, right? You have my best interest in mind, and you can align those priorities. I see where it fails when it's I just have to sell my product, and and you should sell it because it's the best product on the market. Well, there's got to be a need, and then I think that secondary piece, after they've listened and aligned to what does the end customer need, is then come the principles that we've been talking about of, okay, now make it really simple, easy to do business. Maybe it is a smaller portion of the big solution, so make the enablement for my sales team simple so that they can articulate the value, those type of things. So that's probably the 1-2 approach.
That makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to actually spend a minute or two there, and then we'll go to AI for sure. So you cannot have a podcast in 2025 without
That's right.
AI. But going back to that framework, it's an elegant framework that's simple, predictable, profitable. So if a mid-market, go-to-market team is trying to crack into, a decent sized partner like Future Tech, what do you think how should they think through that framework? Like simple, predictable, and profitable. Put it in Future Tech perspective, not from their perspective. What approach do you think they should take? You've talked about talking to the partners, but
Yeah,
above
yeah,
and
yeah.
beyond that.
The biggest thing that they could do is really approach the relationship with a true partnership, and be very clear and align on goals. And I don't think that requires a piece of paper or a 10-page PowerPoint or even a fancy business plan. Really getting on the phone and talking to the partner and being able to, I think, break through all of the noise, because partners like Future Tech are dealing with maybe 100 different vendors at any given time. And I think in order to get their attention, being able to give them face-to-face time and really see where they're coming from and help them to solve their problem, then they'll listen to you all day long.
All right, so let's fast forward to AI because we have a few minutes, and you have seen TechWise a lot, especially as lead marketer and exec. So tell us a little bit, like, where do you think the marketing stack was, 10 years ago? Where is it now? And based on all the movement that you're seeing, where do you think it'll be 2 to 3 years from now?
In the past, it was more difficult to get scale, and you had to get scale with human power and a lot of times money in order to build a bigger, better mousetrap. And I think today companies are bringing a lot of different capabilities now for marketers to build copy and build graphics and target better. I think where the challenge is for many CMOs is, I think if you looked at our MarTech stack even 10 years ago, I think we all remember that eye chart that had every MarTech logo on it that existed, and it was mind-boggling. And we do the same thing today with AI, or even AI that's now integrated into almost every one of those marketing technologies. And the same thing, I think the same question is, where is the value? What's the value I'm going to get? Which is the right tool and technology for me? We've done a couple of things. We have used some AI to do some unsolicited proposals where we're, really hyper personalized, right? Which again used to be a term we all used 10 years ago, but now you can do that with so many more personalized elements, right? Maybe in 10 years ago it was our name and our company and we called it personalization, and now it truly is. We use it for some unsolicited proposals to put in actual dollar amounts of savings from PC productivity. So we're using it that way. And I do hope from the vendor side that they are looking and again listening to what challenges partners have. And I hope that AI opens a lot of productivity doors for onboarding and recruiting and nice beautiful dashboards where we can make sure that we're compliant with programs and I have teased that with all this talk of AI, we might talk about AI right now, and then, as soon as we get off this call, I'm going to go and I'm going to do proof of performance for a vendor, and it's all going to be on paper and very, very much required, but not using AI. So I really look forward to some of the on both the AI in the MarTech stack, and I look forward to the AI in the programmatic element to make working with vendors for partners even more scalable.
That's brilliant. So I want to double click on that a little bit. So you work with 80 brands of various sizes,
Mhm.
and possibly the list will continue to grow. If you had a wish list of top three areas that you think vendors should integrate AI to make it simple, predictable, and profitable for you, what would that be?
So I do a lot of vendor management as well as marketing. So I probably one place is making sure that the onboarding is seamless, easy. I have experienced everything from literally one page and one click and you're onboarded, which may be too light, to months where and 10 calls, which is too. So I'd love to see some AI there. I would love to see some enablement around the when we start talking incentives and rebates and promotions and your CFOs involved at that vendor level, and but there's just a lot of proof of performance and date. I'd love to see some AI there where we have a little bit better. And I know that there is AI in use today, but I'd love to see some there. I think to make it a little bit easier for partners. And maybe the third would be, I kind of mentioned dashboards. We all live by metrics in our business, whatever those metrics or KPIs are. And even just having the ability to put all of that information into one place. Sometimes I just need to know what tier am I with that vendor, and that might be 10 minutes of my day. That should not take 10 minutes. So I think I would love to start seeing some better reporting. And look, some people are doing it really well today, right? Some people are these vendors are quite sophisticated. They're listening to your podcast and they're taking all your advice and really building in. But those are some areas I'd love to make it easy to do business on both sides.
Awesome. So coming back to your team a little bit. So in this age of AI, as you're sort of incorporating, and then the vendors are of course going to listen to you. Hopefully, they will provide you these capabilities. As you're thinking forward, are you hiring different kind of people? Are you reskilling? I mean, how do you interview today versus how you did 3 years ago when it comes to your team that have the right skills that would be ready for the next 3 years?
It's funny. I'm going to answer this a bit differently. I have aged children, and I think this inflection of AI in a curriculum, right? And these AI checkers of am I cheating or not, if you will, right? And it's like, and the parent in me is like, if you walk into an employer like Future Tech and you know how to leverage those tools and enable AI to scale and dare I say work you out of a job, but like work you out of the portions of jobs that it should be, that employer is going to look at you and say that's the person I want to hire. So, and I think that's true today, right? I mean, I want scale when I'm hiring. I want scale. I don't want myself doing that work. I don't want, my team having to do a lot of that bureaucratic work. So yeah, I'll be looking for people that have, of all that MarTech stack that we talked about. And there's AI, probably native apps, but also AI embedded in every one of those MarTech apps. Who can use them, and how can they bring, more productivity to bear for our customers' sake?
That is amazing. Well, the hour is almost over. I do have one last question. I know we're going to see you in Austin, so
Yes.
looking forward to have you on our panel. Super excited. But when you think about this year, there's a lot of noise about economic overhang. Things may slow down, things may speed up. None of us control those contexts.
Right.
What we control is what we do for our customers, right? So, from a future tech perspective, as you're kind of thinking for a 12 to 18 months, what are the one or two main priorities you are focused on from your role perspective?
We're really focused on delivering two different areas of solutions. One is around PC as a service. We are taking over fleets of, large companies, entire PC fleets, and really sweating those assets, if you will, sometimes as well. So those will take over the entire fleet. That those devices will kind of come back to us. Maybe they're interns, maybe they're, retired employees, and when we will get that asset in perfect usable condition to send back out. And sometimes that, that makes the our customer actually buy less from us, which is can be, a strange concept. If you're selling product, it is better for them. We can show them the savings, and then they're able to do other work with that. And so, that is certainly one area. The other is we have today a day one readiness in the infrastructure. Again, I mentioned a lot of our team works in the federal space, and they're spinning up different programs to support the government. And we need to enable them to be, really quick to that market. And so we're looking at that. And then some of the other solutions that we're looking at are just proving grounds for where our customers can come in and test what they need and see those, I think, in whether it's pilots or proof of concepts, but really to prove what they need to be able to make those investments, because investment arguments, if you will, right? Because I think none of us know what's going to happen with the economy. We can guess that there's going to be pressure on budgets, especially federal government budgets. And so being there for our customers, I think in those two places, to be able to articulate the cost savings of the technology, and then also, hey, we've got, some areas over here where you can prove before you go and invest huge amounts of dollars, prove, what the return is before you even, outlay those sums. So, and I think that's where we'll have to just help our customers you know, in this economy of making sure that they are getting more from their budgets.
Amazing. Well, Mary Catherine, thank you very much for being here. I look forward to seeing you in Austin. And again, I know our audience would love, especially that simple, predictable, profitable framework that you used on the brand side and now you're using on the partner side. So thank
Yeah.
you again for being here.
Thanks, Sugata. Appreciate the time.